Jillian Michaels. I swear it's like every few months I'm either talking about Bill Maher or Jillian Michaels.
Today, we've got a hot one.
Jillian, everybody's like, oh, she's irrelevant now. It's like, well, I don't know. She's on TV making these claims, so let's just bust the claim.
Big debate, big fight.
She did ask us to be on her podcast, so maybe we'll be able to talk to her directly.
And it'll be like Rocky IV.
Hello there.
Now I can see them. Okay. Dr. Carl Nadolsky is a board-certified endocrinologist, and he specializes in obesity medicine. And Spencer Nadolsky, he is in fact the medical director for a telehealth company that sells GLP-1 drugs called Sequence. They've been arguably my top critics, trolling me on the internet, and others like me who have significant concerns regarding these GLP-1 drugs.
I don't know how much data you've looked at from that.
A lot. I bet I know a lot more than you. So, like always, I wanted to take it head on. Maybe there's something we can learn today. Maybe I am wrong, and all the doctors who've advised me, maybe they're also magically wrong. But there's so many things to hash out. I want to stay in order here. So, we've set the stage. Let's see how this goes.
Keeping it real with Jillian Michaels.
So first thing is welcome and thank you for coming on and being willing to have this debate. Not a lot of people do that, so I appreciate it, and I want to say that right off the top.
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting us. We do these little, looking at your little video on our thing and doing a response video on podcasts and whatever, but it's nice to have a face-to-face conversation, although digitally face-to-face.
Yeah, and there's a lot more nuance to this than black and white, so it'll be a good conversation. We hope you'll enjoy it.
I'm open-minded. I'm open-minded. I'm with that said. So let's start. I want to try to first find the things that we can agree on, right?
Yeah,
but you guys have taken umbrage with my insinuation that there's a money incentive.
She literally responded to me on Facebook saying, "Well, I assume you guys profit from this."
Yeah, no, we don't make money.
So anyways.
Not yet, anyway.
Now, Spencer, you are the head medical director of Sequence. When you go online, Sequence, comprehensive prescription weight loss program. This is your whole job, is you sell these drugs.
No, so obviously it's the thing is, the way I equate it is any other doctor, the same way they would get paid a salary to just see patients. So I don't make money off the medicines, but from a service level, you would pay to see me to get evaluated to get these types of medicines. But it's not that these medicines are the ones that we only prescribe either. But
yeah, their virtual clinic's a little bit, it's a hinting on concierge without being concierge, just like any other medical, like a lot of the doctors that are going more towards direct care as opposed to like, I only do, insurance and taking care of, pretty sick populations, et cetera, in my job. Whereas there's just, because one thing I'll bet you we agree on is the dysfunction of our healthcare in the United States.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But so this issue you guys had a problem with is that I implied there was a financial incentive, and you were like, absolutely not.
But that's for the
if these went away tomorrow, what would happen to Sequence?
Yeah, so like I'll make money as a doctor regardless of if these drugs, if they came out that like, oh my gosh, there's a big safety signal with these drugs. This is what I always tell everybody. I'm like, people seek me out for my diet and exercise advice. Don't worry about my finances. I'll be fine. I could.
So then why not just do that?
Well, I do.
Because we do.
So I do. Like both. I try to do both. Like if people need the medicine, that's what I give them. But I also always like, and we'll talk about it. But
Okay.
And it goes to one of my points that I would, I'd love to bring up with you, because again, kind of the concept that two things or many things can be true. All these things are not mutually exclusive.
But there's so many things to hash out. I want to stay in order here. So to set the stage real quick, you guys know who Lars Sorensen is, correct?
Yeah,
I know of him. Why?
Because he was the CEO of Novo Nordisk. Yeah. And he said, and I quote, "Obesity is primarily a social and cultural problem. It should be solved by means of a radical restructuring of society. There is no business for Novo Nordisk in that area." Then he was forced to step down. This was in a book called Novo Nordisk by Kurt Jacobson, which has subsequently been removed for purchase anywhere in America. So that's, I mean, that doesn't strike you as odd? Not even a little?
It's not odd. So here's my quick take on that. Again, that I don't know why he would say there's no business for
It's a
Novo
direct
Nordisk
quote. And then you can find it on Acquired FM, which is a podcast that was
I don't
acquired.
deny that. I mean, maybe that's the case. However, if we look at obesity as a disease, yes, it is a hugely environmental issue, right? Our obesogenic environment. You ever hear the term genetics loads the gun?
Yes,
but
I had that conversation with Dr. Agatston in particular. Lifestyle pulls the trigger. I agree completely.
It's all true
With you here.
And so obesity is it is a disease just by definition. It's a very complex neurohormonal disease process with a lot of variable, what we call heritability. So there's a lot of different genes involved. And if we could have perfect lifestyle for everybody with a perfect environment, it is the environment that's changed, right?
Yeah. I was going to say, where was this disease back in 1950?
Exactly. Only the severely genetic people had it. It was there. It was there. It was just much more rare. And there are some very rare, severe genetic causes of obesity. So you ever hear about like the kids that are severely obese when
they're the rare outliers, absolutely, in the Pima Indians, and I fully understand that. Yeah. But you realize the American Medical Association's own group of experts actually advised against considering obesity a disease, and they called it an adaptation in 2013.
AMA. Sorry, who's the
American
AMA?
Medical Association?
Yeah.
Their own committee was like, no, it's not a disease, it's an adaptation. But then they did it anyway.
Yeah.
Under the pretense of being able to charge for it, which I'm not opposed to. But the narrative that it's a disease is bothersome.
It's still hotly debated. So
it's semantic.
So there's a.
Is it? I don't think so.
I want to talk about the false dichotomy. You probably don't check out my memes, but you should.
I've checked out a lot of the things you've done.
Yeah. But no, it's a false dichotomy to say like environment versus drugs. And this is what I always say. It's like, we absolutely should be, and I can't speak for whoever Novo Nordisk and anybody else, but we absolutely should be working on the environment. There's the analogy of like, if you have a dirty fish tank, would you just give them antibiotics or medicine, or would you clean the
Kelly means, yep, had him on the show too.
Hopefully, we should
do both.
Give the medicine to the diseased fish, but also clean the fish bowl. It's a false dichotomy to not work on both. And so that's our stance. We are huge proponents of lifestyle as medicine and fixing the environment. I don't know what it's going to take to fix the environment. Legislation, there's going to be a lot of pushback. We agree that there's issues with big food and a lot of money flowing around here. But as clinicians, we still have to help the patient in front of us.
I understand. Completely understand. I totally understand that. And I agree that help is needed.
Just to go back to the disease, again, this is kind of definition stuff. So the criteria for a disease is, I'm going to go down this, impairment of normal functioning. Okay, so that's one.
It causes that, yes, but it isn't because of that. Now, I've spoken to a geneticist about this in particular, and the argument is that, yes, obviously, there's a predisposition. I have 4 markers for obesity. You guys don't. You guys claim to have had, if I can quote directly, abs in utero. I don't.
That's them. I don't.
That's totally fine. I don't. So I have.
There's a genetic. I have.
But why, if I have this genetic predisposition, then why am I not obese without the drugs?
It doesn't actually do a good job of predicting.
Okay.
Who will develop it? So
and lifestyle
upregulates and downregulates. I get it, but then that would be my argument, right? That we should live a better lifestyle.
Again, these are not mutually exclusive concepts. So the heritability, the genetic predisposition, it's like 40 to 70%, but it's so variable.
And it doesn't guarantee that you're going to develop obesity.
And there's a chance that if I lived 100,000 years ago, maybe I would have died because I didn't have that evolutionary sense of holding onto my adipose tissue during times of famine or something.
I think he's got some Neanderthal genes in him.
Yeah.
As well.
You'll notice
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Come on, Jillian. No.
I agree.
Well, but anyways, characteristic signs or symptoms and harm or morbidity. Those are the characteristics of disease. And it really does. The impairment of normal functioning, it is because of the neuroendocrine control and the dysfunction that happens because of genes and environmental triggers. So obesity itself is a disease with a variable outcome. And what harm does it
I've
cause?
heard opposites to the contrary, that it results in disease, but in fact, there are people, and if you look up what the experts say from the AMA, they say that another reason why it shouldn't be labeled as a disease, because people who are larger and have more body fat are not necessarily sick at all. That was another reason that they said
Right.
it wasn't a disease.
That's fine.
But
And that's
we can move. I'll leave this one up to people to decide for themselves because we could be here for a while on that one. Can
But
we?
well, hold on.
Yeah.
But you are right that the consequences of obesity, so it's variable, right? So pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, atherosclerotic disease, fatty liver, the risk of fibrosis, sleep apnea, so and also mental health, so mental, metabolic, and physical health are all downstream consequences of obesity. Whether or not we call it a disease doesn't matter. Let other people decide upon it.
Okay.
It's still driving these.
Agree with you. I'm there 100%. I'm with you 100%. Okay.
Sounds good.
Can we agree that a calorie deficit, I'm not saying health, I'm not even going to talk about that a calorie deficit will facilitate weight loss? Can we agree on that one?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, good. We're there on that one. All right. Can we agree that there are no negative side effects for reasonably restricting calories, not a very low calorie diet, and exercise?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So we're there on that one. Okay, because my personal, and what we're going to get to, I know what we disagree on is you think people cannot engage in that, or many people cannot engage in that without medicines. And I disagree with you there, and we'll get into that.
Everyone can and should, no matter what.
But then why? But then you bring me right back to then why? Then why the drugs?
So that's the disease of the obesity driving
Disease of the
that.
mind. I mean, I don't think this disease is a big food disease.
Group of people that is very severe because you were intimately involved in it. It's been a long time, I know, but the Biggest Loser, and I don't know how much data you've looked at from that.
A lot. I bet I know a lot more than you, and I can tell you
very, very extensive stuff you guys were doing. Dramatic weight reduction. I don't know if any of those people had any severe consequences because they were relatively young, I think, ish.
I can tell you that of the people I worked with, and we can definitely get into Biggest Loser, even though we're meant to be talking about Ozempic, but the people that I worked with maybe 100 people over the course, me personally, over the course of that show. 35% of them have kept the weight off. In real life, you guys know that 95% of the people that lose a large amount of weight put it back on with a 5% success rate. And we can do a whole other segment on Biggest Loser.
Okay, so that's the basic stuff. And then some of the data.
That and exercise. So we can get to that one. We can do Biggest Loser, but we're on the Ozempic drugs right now.
All right, go
All
to
right.
the Ozempic.
So, blah, blah, blah. Can we agree on the fact that these drugs are successful in taking Ozempic, I think 15% body weight, and tirzepatide, please correct me if I'm wrong, up to 23% body weight?
Well, there's some nuance there because
Okay, hit me.
Ozempic was approved back in 2000.
Oh, Wegovy, am I getting it?
Type 2 diabetes. So
Right.
it's the same drug, semaglutide. But people with obesity complicated by type 2 diabetes, which is very much an obesity-driven disease process, they don't lose as much weight no matter what the treatment, whether it's purely diet, exercise, lifestyle, other medications, or these new really good medications. So relatively, it does kind of matter. So in the diabetes trials, obesity with type 2 diabetes, they don't lose as much weight.
More like 10%.
They don't lose as much as quickly or in total?
No,
in the
long run, overall.
I've never experienced that, and I've worked with
No, that's just
many people. Are you basing this on what? The carbohydrate insulin model of obesity?
No. Like, so for example, in a trial that compared the placebo and lifestyle intervention with 1 milligram Ozempic versus semaglutide versus 2 milligram semaglutide or Wegovy.
Okay. You're talking about, but you're looking at, so then explain this to me. Over the course of this trial, how long was it? How much weight did the diabetic person lose versus the diabetic person on Ozempic?
So these are all people with type 2 diabetes. First of all, this trial that specifically. So the placebo group, lifestyle intervention, lost a little over 2%. The 1 milligram Ozempic got 4.5% more weight reduction than the lifestyle group. And then the 2.4 milligram Wegovy group got another 3% more than.
But what was the total weight loss for the Wegovy group?
About 10%.
10%. Okay, so 10%. So if I'm,
by the way,
if
on
I'm,
average, some people do better, whatever.
I mean, 10%. If I have somebody I'm helping right now, friend, he's 5'6", maybe 5'7". Don't hate me if you're listening, Chuck. 250 pounds. No, sorry. We started at 230. My bad. And we want to get down to 170. We need to lose way over 10%. Now, he's already lost, I think, 20 pounds, walking 10,000 steps a day, and eating 1,600 calories with unlimited greens. And I wish I could call him in here. I think we've been doing this 2.5, 3 months. So we already hit your number, and that's walking 10,000 steps and eating less.
Yeah,
Plus, I mean, I've had, but my point is simply, you can do all of this without it. And
but that's the thing. That's what the studies show you. Not everyone can.
Not everyone can. All right, not everyone can. All right, I'm willing to go with it. Not everyone can. I'm willing to entertain. Not everyone can. Everyone I've ever worked with has been able to. Where they can't keep it off generally comes down to psychological issues. They utilize the food as a coping mechanism, a defense structure. It means something to them, so significant that they're unwilling to give it up. And I've interviewed
the biology, though.
So yeah, what we would argue is that it's a biological appetite driving them to eat more.
And we have the data to support that. And same with the weight reduction issue. So we have all these intensive lifestyle programs going, from really, really, really intensive with your Biggest Loser efforts to all the different diabetes prevention programs for those who have obesity and pre-diabetes, not type 2 diabetes. And the Look Ahead trial with type 2 diabetes, where again, the weight reduction was a little bit less. They're doing intensive coaching, intensive low fat, low carb, meal replacements, all the things that we know can do
Lots of exercise.
And there are data from Roy Taylor in the UK where he does protein shakes and vegetables. And some people lose enough to put their diabetes into remission, but it just doesn't sustain and they regain the weight. But still, even in these med trials that we're talking about, they have intensive therapy trials where the intensive group gets an average of 6, 7 or more % weight reduction. Again, average, right? So some people respond very well, 10, 15, 20% weight reduction, but then the medications still end up adding more. Other than actually these new ones we're talking about, it ends up not being a lot different, mostly probably because these medications support the dietary efforts. The body's biology drives people.
How does it do that? By blunting appetite, correct? It just facilitates people's ability to eat less. So it doesn't really do anything else.
It helps.
That's all it does. It helps them eat less. So there's no other magic mechanism, guys. Correct?
Well, not other than for diabetes and heart.
But I'm not talking about diabetes yet. I'm not even getting it. I would make a case that one of the best ways to resensitize the body to insulin would be exercise.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But we'll table that one. All right, so you're giving me an absolutely on that. So that's good. But I mean, okay. So my point is we couldn't just eat a little bit less without it because that's the magic.
Right.
So you're saying, oh no. All right, okay, with diabetes, okay.
We were the same when we first started going through. We thought we were going to fix everybody with nutrition, exercise. We're the docs who lift. That's our podcast name.
I get it. I know.
When you talk about what are we we're shills.
I know, and it even says that you love lifestyle medicine, which is why I cannot understand how come you and I are having this fight.
Because I think the problem is these are not mutually exclusive. We even wrote an article for MedPage Today several years ago because so many people out there say, oh, doctors just, give medicine and the mainstream medicine. They just want to give medicine. All mainstream evidence-based clinical practice guidelines from the leading experts that are very science-based.
Paid by Novo, of course.
Lifestyle.
Every study you guys reference, paid by Novo. And I've got many others.
but it's all
Not funded by Novo.
The number one recommendation is always lifestyle.
So, but it
Okay.
always, even though the medicines help people get into a calorie, they literally just help people get into that calorie deficit.
Yeah.
So we're not arguing energy balance.
No.
We're not arguing the carbohydrate.
Not even
insulin.
close.
You argue people's ability to get into a calorie deficit without the medication. Then.
That's the biology is fighting
Yes.
against too many people in this obesogenic environment we live in. Because
I do appreciate that. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You're right. Go ahead, sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, so if we could snap, like Thanos or whatever, and change the environment to where people had no choice but to eat the
vegetables and
highly high-filling, nutrient-dense foods, that would shift the environment back and the population level back to a lower level of obesity. The problem is we don't
How to do that.
How do we do that?
I
we
agree
can
with
educate.
you.
We all educate. You educate. We educate. We do the best we can with that. It's just
So
the reality.
The way these drugs work, they hit these receptors in the brain that basically there's
The food
some
noise.
of the psychological stuff you talk about. People can't stop thinking about food. And there's probably a physiological driver behind it. It's not very well
Food's
known.
addictive, guys. I mean, we know for a fact they engineer this stuff to be addictive. We know this.
So
We
we're
I know.
not arguing against that. So
Absolutely.
the medicines basically turn off the signal to want to eat those foods. Obviously, just like the analogy, we should clean the fish bowl. We should
Okay.
absolutely clean the fish
Okay,
bowl.
so
We're not gonna argue with that.
let's talk limitations first before we talk
That-
about. I want to talk limitations with these things now. Let's presume everybody needs them, and okay, so and there's no side effects. Put aside the side effects.
No. To set the background, though, the reason we're even doing this is because I was like, Jillian went on Bill Maher and they talked about all the bad things. But
There are side effects.
There are side effects, right? All medicines have side effects, and not everyone should just get beyond the medicine.
And
so that's the background.
Focus on the risk-benefit ratio and all those.
Just like any
Okay,
medicine.
I want to do that. That's exactly my point. So, like, if you came to, or somebody came to me, I've even recommended this for friends, Chantix, which I'm sure is like the devil. I've never looked into it personally, but I can only imagine the list of side effects must be hell on earth. However, if somebody, I have had people come to me and be like, I cannot quit. I've tried for years. I tried the vape. I tried the patch. I tried blah, 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 hypnotherapy. Okay, it's a finite period of time. It has a 35% success rate, and you get off of it. So with these drugs, you never can come off of them. What is there, like an infinitesimal amount of people that don't gain the weight back?
Some patients will. It's about 10, maybe 10 to 15, maybe 20% can come off of it.
You'd have to send me that trial. I didn't see that.
Yeah. Well, it's
2/3 gain it back in the first year and then some. Yo-yo on crack, quote unquote, because of muscle loss. Dysfunctional vagus nerve. I mean, I could go on and on with all the things I've heard from different doctors about this. But the bottom line is the majority gain it back if they get off, correct?
If they get off, that's
You can't get off. It's a marriage, not a fling.
That goes back to the biology that this is treating. Again, this is not black and white. There is the biology that's driving the weight regain. Just like if we do it with pure intensive diet and exercise.
Hypertension, same way. Type 2 diabetes.
And those are all obesity-driven diseases.
Right. So if you get off those, the common analogy is for blood pressure. So
if you have high blood
try to
pressure,
do lifestyle, take your blood pressure lower. Oh, shoot, it's not working. Let's go ahead and start an ACE inhibitor or some sort of medicine. Blood pressure normalizes. The doctor, after a month, goes, all right, let's take you off your blood pressure medicine. And all of a sudden, the blood pressure comes back up.
Still trying to do lifestyle, by the way.
Again, the underlying issue is an appetite dysregulation. So it's not.
If you remove the dysregulating components.
Yeah, so ideally we would. That's what we're saying. We're not.
Okay, you're saying they can't do it. Is what you're saying? Like you have to.
In this environment, it's going to be extremely difficult. Even if we're able to transplant their environment, it's still they would probably still eat more of those foods.
Yeah, they would. Some of them.
Yeah, but
there's more complexities and more nuances. Is that people have published studies about like obesities because of all the different potential environmental triggers that range from things that even I'm like almost skeptical about, like viruses and whatnot.
Right. I don't understand that. Maybe we could talk about that on another show, but I have heard that. Yeah.
Right. But I guess the point is there are so many different factors that are part of these environmental triggers to the genetic foundation that everyone has different parts.
Imagine a kid gaining weight throughout childhood and having obesity younger versus more recently, someone had a pregnancy and had kids and it disrupted their lifestyle, or the pandemic disrupting somebody's lifestyle. I have a feeling their biology is different than someone who had it predisposed as a kid. So you know what I mean? Like their habits got disrupted later versus as a kid. There may have been more of a genetic factor with that appetite dysregulation. And this is what we see. I wean people off these medicines.
We often have to.
Yeah, we have to because it
Covered,
whatever.
you know,
But like there are absolutely, and this is where I think it's a false dichotomy. We hear obesity doctors saying, like, no, obesity is a disease. Everybody's got to take these medicines forever.
That's not true.
It's just not true.
Jillian Michaels is in the news again for recommending against extremely effective anti-obesity medicine. She says these drugs have serious side effects and the results are not lasting. This is the case of tell me you know nothing about these obesity medicines without saying you know nothing about these obesity medicines. There's a common myth about these obesity medicines that they're a quick fix, they're a crutch, that they're a Band-Aid, that you stop them and you regain the weight. It's absolutely true that if you stop them, you will gain the weight back. However, these medicines are meant to be taken chronically, just like any other therapy for a chronic disease.
I've heard you on your podcast say, well, of course you have to.
So because we have this issue where, yeah, some people who truly should, we haven't even talked about who really should be getting these medicines.
I know, and I think we would agree on that too, because like I appreciate your position. I want to get okay. Well, you know what?
Okay.
Tell me, because I do agree with you here. Please tell me who you think.
So I'm talking to people about, who are on these medications doing very, very well.
Okay.
Putting their diabetes or their pre-diabetes, their fatty liver into remission, sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel, first of all, there's a mental health benefit. There are some mental health concerns that you brought up, but there's a huge benefit because they say, oh my God, I don't think about food all the time. I feel great. I'm physical. Now I'm exercising, by the way, and that's something we can talk about later. But then now they're scared because there is a cost issue. The insurance companies are getting upset and we know they're going to end up getting off of it. So we talk about, okay, here are the data that show what habits can help people maintain exercise volume above and beyond what they were doing to get down to weight, maybe using meal replacement shakes, minimally processed whole food diets, all these things, but you got to find a way to keep the habits. We talk about the biology might make you start to drive for regain, and it might make you hungry and have cravings. So maybe there are some cheaper options we can use, but we're going to work on it. And I don't want them to fall through the cracks, show up a year later, regain 50 pounds and have their type 2 diabetes and all the complications of that. So we are talking actively about how can we work on maintenance primarily through lifestyle.
Well, who's the person that you recommend this for? So for example, you guys we've through social, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're a trainer. I then said, are you aware that I interview 4 doctors a month and have for 5 years? And I mean, they're all different kinds of doctors, from endocrinologists, nephrologists, cardiologists.
Do they even lift?
Peter Attia lifts. I know you've bashed him too, but yes, he's quite the lifter. PhDs like Lane Norton. I mean, he's a world-class power.
Lane Norton's my boy.
So, I mean, I talked to all these people. Well, okay, hold on. The ones that I really respect will come down to the fact that they're like, well, for an extremely obese patient who's got advanced CKD or, heart disease and fatty liver disease and type 2 diabetes, and we've tried everything. We need a desperate life or death intervention here. Then I'm like, well, okay, they were already presenting with all these diseases. The side effects wouldn't even compare to what's already going on.
Yeah.
Maybe, twist my arm. Like, I personally have helped people like that, which is where, it comes down to a rub, because that's actually what I do, and I can show I've done it, and I have a 35% success rate with the people I've worked on and within those categories. However, I'd be like, okay, uncle on this one. But that's not what's happening. And that's not what Wegovy is for. It's for weight loss. And it's not
Yeah, no, you're right. And you and I are now, that example sounded a bit more extreme than maybe what I would make it, but we're on kind of the same page. So absolutely, the severity of disease should help guide the intensity of therapy, from bariatric surgery for those who have significant obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, because we know it's going to reduce those risks. When we talk about the amount of weight reduction that, that 10, 15%, you're like, God, that guy already got it. That's where we have those data.
That's
so 10%,
nothing, though, guys.
No,
the people
that's
we're
where
talking.
The data are, though. I can't help with the
data. Well, data outside of 10%, 15%.
So 7 to 10% weight reduction is the goal for diabetes prevention when you have pre-diabetes. You start getting over 10% weight reduction, you start getting rid of hypertension, dyslipidemia.
But I say more.
cardiovascular
My argument is
down.
we need more.
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you again. My bad. Chris is gonna kill me. I don't think that's enough. Now I understand the argument is we're seeing all this improvement. And admittedly, I was not crazy. I was not a crazy fan of the doctor on The Biggest Loser because he was ripping contestants off of their medications so quickly. In some cases, things like antidepressants, and he was practicing different subspecialties of medicine that I didn't think he was qualified to practice. And he was pulling contestants off of metformin and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, hold on a minute. I think this is crazy. And he was doing it within the first month. And the reason I thought it was crazy is because obviously I wrote a best-selling book with an endocrinologist by the name of Christine Darwin. I thought advice from her and other relevant doctors in those subspecialties would have been better than one guy making all these decisions. But point being, he was taking these people off of it within the first month. They were losing 10% within the first month. And because they were actively eating better and actively moving more, there were improvements. So I understand what you're saying, that like this is enough to see improvements. But if you've got a guy like the gentleman that I'm working with casually right now, who's lost that, and we got a ways to go, now what? This is where you're hitting a wall.
What's his clinical status? Because that's what I'm talking about. So if you have type 2 diabetes, over 15% weight reduction, I know, and this is where we have to tell people, we have to sort of modulate their goal, their expectations sometimes, because it is hard. But when, so if someone weighs 300 pounds and they have, let's just say they have all the criteria for pre-diabetes and they have fatty liver and all these things. They don't have type 2 diabetes because that does take you into another level of advanced disease.
I understand.
Maybe they even have had a heart attack. That's where the studies show that over 15% weight reduction, and yes, we're going to work hard to keep that muscle, by the way. We'll talk about that later. But 15% weight reduction, that's where you put those things into remission, prevent it, even if they only get 45-pound weight loss. And I always tell people, hey, anything more than that, it's the cherry on top. But that's our clinical goal.
Okay.
Because that's what correlates to the clinical. Well, so I always tell people, it's literally what's on the inside that counts. Mental, metabolic, physical health, and those weight loss. I don't care about their weight. The weight, the number on the scale. I care about what does that correlate to, what is that a surrogate for, and we're going to hammer those things out with all the tools that we need to as necessary. But going back to who needs it, the more advanced disease, the more severe the disease, the more aggressive we should be. By the time they get to me as an endocrinologist and obesity specialist,
it's gone south.
They've tried. They've tried everything.
What I would argue though is there a lot of people that come to me.
They don't have the severe disease.
They've had obesity for a while, and they've tried these lifestyle things so many different times. So then it's kind of like, all right, we could try it again. And then what? You just let them continue to have their obesity?
I have heard this. Okay.
Progress.
I admit that I cannot tell you how many people, including the gentleman that I am casually working with, who's like, I've tried everything. He's one of the producers here, so that's why I keep looking after the sound. Because I'm ready for him to storm in and yell at me. With that said, I've tried everything. Okay, what have you tried? I eat healthy. And guys, they're not tracking calories. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
We didn't know we could drop F-bombs. So
I was told not to drop it in the beginning of the show because of the YouTube algorithm. I think you're good now. But you are doctors. You might want to be careful. I have less to lose. I do lunges for a living here. But my point simply is that I do hear, I've done it all. But yet, when I sit down with them and I'm like, forget all the, don't worry about keto, don't worry about carnivore, don't worry about carb, we got to cut the calories. Here are some strategies to manage it. Like, let's include volume, right? Go crazy with volume and water and protein, and let's try to help manage satiety, and let's remove all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. When I can explain the very simple science of calories in, calories out, I'm generally pretty successful pretty quick.
Great, and we don't disagree with that.
Okay, so just to play devil's advocate, you said you had 35% success rate. So then if you have 65% of people that don't respond the way that you're talking about, what do you do with them?
I hear you. But my argument is, okay, I don't disagree with you. My argument is, though, on that show, you're dealing with individuals that have such severe trauma I'm talking about a woman who lost her entire family in a car accident, a newborn, her 2 young children on top of the newborn, and her husband. I'm talking about a woman whose mother was a heroin addict that would turn tricks for heroin while she was locked in a closet. I mean, I'm not going to be able to solve that on Biggest Loser. But these are the kind of individuals I was dealing with on that show, because these are the kind of people that get up to 300, 400, 500 pounds. Now, that said, in some of these cases, I have these people for a week, sometimes 2. So again, like if you look at the people I was able to work with directly and how long I was actually able to work with them, and the fact that I was missing arguably the appropriate team of doctors, okay, and a psychoanalyst who could help these people with the deeper stuff, I'm confident I could have had a much bigger number. This is just me alone. So
unfortunately, that's true. And I'll tell you, I've made some posts because it's heartbreaking in the real life. Like you just said, you're seeing those. It's prevalent out there.
Well, adverse childhood events
not a week goes by where because we do weight histories, like when did the weight start?
Okay.
And a lot of times we're looking for that youth onset, real strong genetic, and sure shooting. I mean, I get kind of tingly thinking about it because not a week goes by where oftentimes a female with significant trauma that, like you just said,
sexual abuse.
Trauma, abuse. I mean, it's horrible. And it's, it breaks my heart every time. And luckily, I'm lucky to have a pretty good team, dietitians. We have some, counselors, psychologists and stuff. We got to do better as a society too. I mean, absolutely. And that sucks.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I will say beyond you, Jillian. So like, okay, let's say you're the greatest lifestyle counselor ever and you have a high response rate. Even in these randomized control trials, the gold standard, the average is somewhere around 6-7% average body weight loss over the course of a year.
Average.
There's about 15 or so percent that will get the Wegovy type results, but the rest of them, it's less than 10% weight loss, and then over time they start regaining the weight. So then, like, what about those people that just you just leave them?
But on the other hand, this is where we debate.
I don't think we just leave them at all. But I don't think that this provides a permanent solution. So getting to this next one, and this is where I think we're there are limitations with these drugs. This is my point: is that you will stop, you'll plateau on them, and then Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford had an article in MedPage where it's like, okay, so when they plateau, give them phentermine and this one and that drug and this drug and that. And the drug list is like this effing long. I'm like, so this is your answer? And a double agonist, a triple agonist, up button drugs, more pharmacology.
Well, so here would be my take on this. And again, I can't expunge some of. So I know we went back and forth about conflicts, and I'm going to die in the hill if I don't mind getting lunches, by the way. But I'm not going to be paid by pharma to do it, especially the ones I'm an expert in. And I do write
with them constantly. It's under what is it? Open payments? At least 100 times in 2022.
I'm going to die in the
I can't even pull up 2023 yet.
No, it's okay. It's that. Trust me, that's nothing. It's lunch. Okay. Anyways, my point is, I write some guidances. I can't get into more of that, but I have some thoughts on what you just brought up. So it goes back to that clinical severity and how aggressive do we need to be and for what reason? Okay. So if somebody has type 2 diabetes, let's say they have a little bit of advanced fatty liver and they have high risk of fibrosis. I know that's not what you get into, but just trust me on that, I guess. And they really need, let's say they lose 14% of their weight on Wegovy or Zepbound or whatever. Okay. Because those would be appropriate medications for that person. Pre-diabetes, fatty liver, all these things, right? And we get close to our clinical goals, but we need a little bit more weight reduction. Sure, maybe something else. But I'll tell you what, there are other medications that have other benefits, also other side effects. All medications have benefits and side effects that we have to consider.
But diet and exercise don't have any.
Not everyone should just be on it. The three of us,
they might need surgery.
Should not be on it. But yeah, they might need surgery.
But
there are other
surgery has less side effects. I mean, but we can get into that one later. But anyway, go on.
We're not, we don't talk against that.
Basically, what he's saying, the more severe the disease
You
process,
might
more,
need to do other
the
things.
more aggressive you're going to have to be to get.
Here's what Spencer and I debate on even our own podcast about, because my issue and one of the reasons the insurance companies are going to quit covering, because first of all, the cost. That's a whole different issue that we can all probably go crazy about. But I don't think people who have low severity of disease should get these expensive, more aggressive medications that should be reserved for people with severe disease who are going to get the most benefit. There was a cost-effective analysis recently that compared essentially Wegovy versus an endoscopic procedure for kind of like making a sleeve, but it's not a sleeve, not a surgical thing. And it was a cost effectiveness, but it was for like a middle-aged guy with obesity, but no complications. Like he didn't have prediabetes, diabetes, or anything like that, right? It was a kind of a mathematical thing. And the procedure was like 3 times better.
What do you mean a mathematical thing? I'm so sorry.
Well, this gets into cost-effective analysis.
Oh, I understand. You're talking about money. Like he utilized that as a solution because it's a one-shot deal, arguably, and not an ongoing multiple thousands of dollars a year.
So the cost of these things is one extraordinary problem.
Yes.
And it's in the United States more than any other place. So that's a different debate. We could all probably get on the same soapbox of that. All the problems with that stuff.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's a problem. Because now we've started and we have to get off. So I believe, Spencer, you said it's in single digits, the amount of people that don't stick to this, from initial side effects of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, which is upwards of 50%.
In the studies, I may have said
but the FLOW trial itself said it was 17% that had to get off because they couldn't tolerate side effects. That's a fifth that couldn't even tolerate it. And when you look at, then there's another one that just a report that came out in Reuters, which is an analysis by Prime Therapeutics. And they're owned by Blue Cross Blue Shield. They manage the pharmacy benefits of 38 million people. And they said that in the first year, only 32% of the people taking GLP-1s, including Ozempic, were still taking the medication a year later, citing side effects, plateau, and third cost.
Yeah,
so that's a problem, 66%. That's not single digits.
Cost and shortage. So but hold on. That analysis is flawed for multiple. That's why you have to look at randomized controlled trials.
38 million people.
Right. So what the way they do the analysis, they could be going out and getting compounded version. They could be going out and paying cash for these
things. What does it have to do with it, though? If it's compounded, it's cheaper.
I know. So it won't be in that report, though. That's what I'm saying. So it'll look like they stopped it.
Well, 17% is still 3 times more than...
I'd have to look at the FLOW trial. That's the one that just came out.
Okay. 17% left the trial because they couldn't tolerate side effects.
Look at step one.
Step one, I'm looking at it right now. It was 7% in the semaglutide group versus 3% discontinued.
It's literally, I will pull it up. I'll make sure to pull it up. 17%. FLOW Illustrated, 17% left the trial because they couldn't tolerate the side effects.
And remember, that one was for just simply looking at chronic kidney disease. We're looking at the actual obesity trial.
But you're suggesting that the side effects aren't bad and that single digits quit.
We're not saying people do get severe nausea
and stuff.
I will say that it's all about risk. My patients tell me, you will take my Wegovy or Zepbound from my cold dead hand. Do not ever try to stop this from me. No, some people do want to get off of it. They try to wean off it. But like most people, when they even despite a little mild nausea. However, a small percentage.
Nausea? One woman said she vomited so much her teeth cracked.
One woman says it was so bad it sent her to the emergency room several times. She says she vomited so much that she lost teeth.
That was in a podcast that was through the Wall Street Journal. I mean,
so this also highlights this also highlights why you have to be very careful in titration. Some doctors keep cranking up the dose. You want to have good dietitians who will help with the lifestyle modifications to help minimize side effects as well. Because if people eat heavy meals like a pizza, and the medicine should help them eat fewer, but they try to stress test these medicines. They eat a pizza, they feel terrible.
Diet is so important on these. So nutrition quality.
So if you keep sometimes we actually go down in a dose because they don't tolerate it. And so sometimes in these trials, they just have protocols where they just keep cranking it up. And then in the real world, people that don't know how to use these medicines, the doctors crank it up because they don't know any better, and the patients come back, and then that's where they end up in the hospital. They need to get an IV. They need the antiemetics and that type of thing. We try to keep them out of the hospital, but we're not going to deny that there are nausea is by far the most common thing we see.
Absolutely.
And we try to counsel our patients.
It's part of the mechanism that not nausea is aside. Not everyone gets nausea.
I know.
But
up to 50% of these people are experiencing something to that, right? Which we'll get to. Which we'll get to. You bring up delayed gastric emptying, and I must admit, when I was on Real Time, I did in fact make a mistake about pancreatitis.
She claimed 400% increase that on the show. Then on the Facebook page, that when she responded to me, she said 900% increase. What do the actual data show?
They said you are 400 times more likely. Yeah. That was intestinal blockage. The answer is 900% more likely. And this is coming. So the guy that you love to rip on, Mark Hyman, was sure to send me the study. From the University of British Columbia, and that was the study. So I can send you that study, University of British Columbia.
So this is why you have to look at...
Guys, there are numerous studies, by the way. Dozens. And there's... I got them. Okay. Study published in JAMA. Studies have found increased risk of gastrointestinal adverse events, biliary disease, pancreatitis, bowel obstruction, gastroparesis.
Not a randomized control trial.
Do you know how many there are? Randomized trials examining efficacy of GLP-1 agonists for weight loss were not designed to capture these events due to small sample sizes and short follow-up.
Yeah, these sample sizes
there are dozens of these guys. Of which are
outcome trials.
I posted about.
Hold on, here's a direct. This one's great. This is my favorite. Okay, so this one's from the Curious Journal of Medicine. You guys realize this was all sent to me by endocrinologists, the ones that aren't qualified, that I don't talk to.
But why are the expert endocrinologists, literally the ones who publish these data,
endocrinologists are paid by Novo? The trial that you're referring to is a Novo trial, Sustain 6. Okay. So this one is from the Curious Journal of Medical Science. No competing interests, by the way, not funded by Novo. The semaglutide and cardiovascular outcomes in patients with type 2 diabetes Sustain 6 trial illustrated subcutaneous semaglutide was associated with acute pancreatitis at similar rates to placebo controls. However, other studies have shown conflicting results. I have a list of them, by the way, in this abstract. It goes on and on and on. It's on the box. I mean, in fact, there have been numerous reports linking GLP-1.
But there's a reason, and this is always been a concern.
I have you saying there's none.
It's been studied for like 30 years now.
There are numerous reports, and exenatide, liraglutide. It goes all the way back.
And all these huge trials do not show a statistically significant problem. That's why I'm telling you.
Speaking of huge trials, I can't wait until we get to the Select trial. And I'll send you all of these. I mean, my God, a meta-analysis of serious adverse events reported with exenatide, liraglutide, acute pancreatitis, and cancer. Pancreatitis, there literally... There are dozens of them.
The most recent meta-analysis of semaglutide specifically. Yeah, that just came out.
Sustain 6? Is this the Sustain 6?
And that's a single RCT.
Yeah, but also Select, the huge 17,000 person for.
There's a huge problem with Select. I cannot wait to get into Select. Should we jump ahead with Select? That one's awesome. I mean,
still a ton of
I actually wanted to go thyroid next, but I have no problem going over all of the criticisms I received on the Select trial, all from these non-existent doctors that I supposedly don't talk to or who aren't credentialed, like Peter and Mark.
You're talking to them. I don't know.
But I know none of them are qualified. So over the past, let's just say 2 years that I've been discussing this with doctors, none of them are qualified. None of them.
I don't know.
Not
I'm
not
looking at the data.
I don't want to cite Hyman because he's a...
You don't have to cite Hyman. They're gastroenterologists.
The other Cleveland Clinic doctor, not Hyman.
Okay. So let's look at thyroid. So hold on a second. This one's really interesting because I will absolutely say yes, it's rare. Spencer, you said on the Primal Kitchen podcast, we don't have the same receptors as rodents
Right.
These proliferative C cell, maybe rodent-specific GLP-1 receptors have been demonstrated on normal rodent C cells. Okay, but we do actually have much lower, but we do happen to have these GLP-1 receptors on our thyroid. That's just not true. So
They aren't there. They're not readily available or not readily there.
well, there was a signal. Then you said there's been no signal for thyroid issues. There was a signal.
No,
In
no RCT data.
Not in the
There's been some mixed observational data that's really
because people are looking too much. Here, people are looking too much. Here, let me.
all the detection.
Yeah, so let me show it. Let me tell you, because as an endocrinologist, so we talk about thyroid.
He's the one that checks thyroid cancer.
Yeah.
okay.
we deal
Because
with thyroid.
the European Medicines Agency put up a signal, and there's I have the whole study here, and it's bad. And then
But it's not. It's not.
okay, the increased risk was higher. Okay.
And then when they've redone all this stuff and they look at all the trials, this concern was brought up because of the rat trials, right? This has been a black box concern, and something people are all doctors are concerned about it too for the past 20 years since Byetta, the exenatide, was approved. So we think about it, but never was there in any trial a real signal of that. Medullary thyroid cancer is a big deal. So we do not give this to anybody with a family history of MTC, something called MEN2, these syndromes that people like I would see. They are exceedingly rare. What people are actually seeing when they start looking, it's similar to South Korea several years ago.
Okay.
This gets into thyroid stuff. So papillary thyroid cancer is a pretty common thyroid cancer. You ever hear about people say, well, if you had to have cancer, you pick whatever cancer? That's kind of like papillary thyroid cancer. Generally speaking, not that severe. But what South Korea did was they decided, well, we're going to start screening people for it. And what happened was the minute they started screening people with ultrasounds and stuff, the incidence went way up. Suddenly everyone had papillary thyroid cancer. You know what happened to the risks of it though? The death from it, stayed at like 0.0 or so, not 0.0, but 0. Whatever it was.
Okay.
And so in these, post-marketing vigilance trials or studies, people are just looking for it. Sometimes inappropriately so because people are paranoid about it because of the black box
Okay,
warning.
this one does
That's
not
why
sound
they're doing randomized
inappropriate.
trials.
So, okay, this research was done by a gentleman in France. So another thing that I have been taught by all the doctors that aren't educated is that to get a more accurate assessment of information, to search the European database for information and Canada. So this one was done by this guy in France named Jean-Luc Fellet. I don't know if I can pronounce his name properly, but professor of medical pharmacology at the University Hospital of Montpellier, also in charge of the National Pharmacovigilance Survey of these drugs of the French Medicine Agency. Jean-Luc Fellet explained that for several years, it's been known that when GLP-1 agonists are given to rats and mice, they have shown an increased risk of thyroid cancer. It's also known that human beings have GLP-1 receptors in their thyroid tissue. So it's conceivable that messaging with GLP-1 might mess with your thyroid. He decided to look into it. France has one of the largest medical databases in the world. So they went back and they analyzed the data for all the patients with type 2 diabetes who had taken these drugs for 1 to 3 years in the period between 2006 and 2018. They then compared those patients to a sample of diabetics who'd not taken the drugs. The findings were startling. Quote, we show there is an increased risk about 50 to 75% more of you developing thyroid cancer, and the increased risk was higher 1 to 3 years of GLP use, and if it remained elevated for 3 years plus.
That was the one in JAMA.
Yeah,
That
so
was
we
the
know
letter.
we know that one.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, but there's diabetes, obesity, and metabolism, a meta-analysis of randomized clinical control trials to investigate whether there's an association,
But in
conclusions.
the diabetes metabolism and syndrome one
that just got published.
this huge meta-analysis of 37 randomized
But
trials.
you said not one case. I'm not saying it isn't rare.
No, it not
Spencer
more than
did.
placebo. Not more than placebo.
Yeah.
Not more than placebo.
You said on this podcast that we don't have the receptors. That's not true. Then you said there hasn't been one case. That's not true.
The thing that people worry about is thyroid cancer because there's a big black box warning that says thyroid cancer, and it's seen in rats. Rats have these different cells in their thyroid that actually have receptors for GLP-1, whereas humans don't have these receptors. So it's an interesting thing. The rats did have what's called a hyperplasia, increasing in cells in those specific type of thyroid cells. And it's a very rare type of thyroid cancer called medullary thyroid cancer, very rare. So it's seen in rats and it hasn't been seen in humans. Most people ask about the black box warning, which is medullary thyroid cancer. People are like, I'm going to get thyroid cancer taking this medicine. That's probably the most common thing we see people worried about. And they found it in rodents. Medullary thyroid cancer is a very rare type of thyroid cancer. It comes from these C cells, specific cells in the thyroid. Rats have GLP-1 receptors on their C cells, and they found hypertrophy, hyperplasia, I believe, in rodents, and then a higher incidence of medullary thyroid cancer in rodents. So it's like big black box warning. It's never been found in humans.
Well, she also mentions thyroid cancer again.
Thyroid.
We have talked about this again ad nauseum. It is the exceedingly rare medullary thyroid cancer that was only seen in rodents who have higher GLP-1 receptors on their C cells in their thyroid, and it has not been shown in humans.
The husband. We retrieved 64 trials, 26 of which reported at least one incident of thyroid cancer.
Never said there was not one case.
You did.
No, I didn't say. I know I didn't say that. No, it's not.
You did.
Yes.
It's only in rats.
So listen. Biggest meta-analysis just recently published.
Guys, I'm not saying it isn't rare, a rare side effect. Obviously, it is rare, but you're like, nah, not a thing.
Placebo. That's why placebo is so important. Randomized, no increased risk of neoplasm, pancreatic or thyroid cancer with semaglutide. And
so
now
what are all these studies? Okay, so we retrieved 64 trials, 26 of which reported at least one incident case of thyroid cancer. GLP-1 treatment was associated with a significant risk. It is compared to placebo. Obviously, that's the point.
Right. So, and then
patients who were not taking the drugs.
Hold on a second. When you have to understand what a detection bias is. If there's a big black box warning on the medicines to look out for thyroid cancer, exactly what my brother is saying, you get screened more often. The more often you screen, the more often you're going to see things that were already there. That's what we're saying. That's why you have to do randomized controlled trials. We're not saying
it's still drugs. It's still this is where
I agree. It is still drugs.
Don't just the people taking it in Hollywood, the people taking compounded stuff that nobody knows what's in that, the people getting it prescribed when they shouldn't really be getting it, when the benefits don't outweigh. Now let's just say there is a statistically significant risk. The one thing that is real,
I'm not saying it does not show statistically significant. It just shows it's a concern.
There's something right. Okay, so let's just say, there is one thing that comes up in all these trials that actually is a hint statistically significant, and that's gallbladder disease. From that can be gallstones. From that could cause pancreatitis. But also, by the way,
not the mechanism that they're listing, though. In fact, I went to pancreatician, doctors, and I was like, explain to me outside of this, what is the mechanism for pancreatitis? And hang on, because I'm going to pull it right from my friggin' email here. Hyperplasia was the answer. So the answer is, Jill, by stimulating GLP-1 receptor cells in pancreatic islet beta cells and endocrine duct cells, this can cause hyperplasia, which is an overgrowth of cells. It can cover small ducts, aka duct occlusion, increase pancreatic weight, subsequent acute or chronic pancreatic inflammation. That has nothing to do with the gallbladder, though.
That's why this is even a thing. That's why it's been monitored so much.
But you guys are like, it's just gallbladder stuff. It's not.
No. I'm saying one of the one here. So listen,
I'm freaking podcast saying that.
Pancreatitis is not statistically more significant in the medicine than placebo. So, but that's why.
It is in numerous studies that I've listed for you already, including the one that was 900%.
But I was trying to tell you is the one real risk that is statistically significant is the gallbladder disease. So what I was going to say is that's a real. It's like 1.5 to less than 1%. That's a real. It's small. It's small
for gallbladder.
Significant, yeah. So gallbladder disease. So what I'm saying is we have to consider risk. We have to consider the side effects that are real.
You guys
They
say
are
1%.
real.
Studies have shown that 10 to 25% of a very low calorie diet community develop gallstones. Well,
Right.
when you're on
I'm not
Ozempic,
talking
you're on another 2022 study found that Ozempic and similar drugs are responsible for gallstone blockages, blah, blah, blah. And then I have it at 10 to 25%. That's not 1%.
Well, I'm going based on big, huge.
We gotta look at randomized.
Yeah.
I know, the Novo trials, right. But yet there are dozens not funded by Novo that somehow managed to be in conflict.
Randomized
You
trials.
have to.
I
it's the
just
big
thought they were randomized. There was an analysis of, what was it, 64 randomized trials?
Well, I guess regardless, my point is the gallbladder thing, it is statistically significant. I'm talking about randomized trials where we can see it compared to placebo, because those things are very prevalent in anybody with obesity, diabetes, and stuff anyways. Also surgical patients, maybe, I don't know if you had any in The Biggest Loser, rapid weight loss, it happens.
We had one. I had one. All of my contestants, a guy named Mark, one.
But all drugs, including supplements, by the way. A lot of people, we even got into, tried to, get into some evidence-based supplements at one point. Supplements that do anything, drugs that do anything, they're all drugs.
If you have an effect,
If they
you
have a
have side
physiologic
effects.
effect. they
Which is
are
why I
drugs.
established early on that diet and exercise don't have side effects. But
You can get gallstones.
they
Much
have
as I-
side effects. Diet, very low calorie diet, starvation. That's not reasonable calorie restriction. I established that early on with you. I said
But
outside
that's
of a
not-
very
again,
low
it's
calorie
not
diet.
mutually exclusive. We are so obsessed with that stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, Spencer, people thought he was too obsessed with it because
Yeah.
they were worried people were going to fall through the cracks and not get appropriate care.
My first quarter evaluation as a doctor in residency, they thought I was a lifestyle zealot. And I said, you know what?
Too extreme.
You guys are underzealous about lifestyle.
And they came back.
And then my third year, they're like, after I won the resident award, they said, you know what? You were right.
President Award.
We are all on the same. We are
Guys, the point, here's the thing. I feel that you have dramatically minimized the risk, and that you've gone after me. You're like, she's so full of shit.
No.
She's, I mean, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Are you kidding me? All I do is talk to doctors all day.
People away who truly need it and get benefit from it. That's I see the severe, very sick people who really benefit.
So, okay, because do we even need to get into all these other side effects? Because the stomach paralysis, intestinal blockage, and all that shit is scary as hell. Do you want to go down that road? The Bezoar conversation is horrifying.
Those are statistically so minimal compared to the
They're
benefits.
not. Another study found that 23 people who took these meds, 4 of them had moderately large gastric bezoars. When they looked at people who weren't on GLP-1s, none had a bezoar, 0 out of 77. And, oh my God, this was done, I could pull this one up.
Consider the statistics. So gastroparesis
6 out of
is not
23?
paralysis, first of all. It's a clinically relevant gastric delay, and some of that is part of the mechanism of action.
It is definitely, but you don't think there's side effects to that? Like, anybody who understands a complex...
We're not denying side effects. That's why you
serious, guys.
have side effects. All drugs have potential risks. You have to balance the benefits.
This is why you give the
compared to the
medicine
risks.
to
This
the
is why
people that need the medicine.
All right, so then we don't have to go over, do you have any particular, because you guys were, there's no thyroid, she's full of shit, and there's no this, she's full of shit. I mean, okay, so we're gonna move on. We agree that there are side effects then?
Sure.
There can be side effects.
Risks
Okay.
and benefits.
So then it seems like where we net out, and here's where I have given the arm twist multiple times on the extreme case argument.
Mhm.
Where do you net out what does that mean for you? Because as you know, the majority of people, they want to put 50% of the population on this drug in the next 10 years, guys. They're advocating it now for 6-year-olds. What is it, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is essentially a subsidiary of Big Pharma, is now it's a front line of defense for children starting at 12. Are you really there on this?
It's
Only if
again,
you-
it's risk benefits those with severe disease.
We have
Those who have-
A 12-year-old has severe disease. A 6-year-old has severe disease.
They can. They
that
absolutely can.
person probably needs to have genetic testing though for
Yeah.
the very severe early onset monogenic or syndromic obesities, which may respond to these because we don't want them to get diabetes. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be all over nutrition and exercise stuff. You know how you ever hear of people like that who the parents have to lock the cupboards? Because their
Yes.
kids will not stop eating.
Yes, but the parents shouldn't have it in the house. And I do understand. Listen,
Your kids.
I completely understand that these kids are getting addicted to the food. I was one of those kids. I understand that it's environmental. I understand there's a genetic predisposition. And I would argue that I am that person. I was overweight as a kid. I have 4 markers that I'm not happy about, including an ApoE4 gene, which I'm super pissed about. I mean, I have a family history of heart disease. Like, I'm that girl. But my argument is, you claim you're not. You're genetically lucky. Even though I would argue, based on everything I've seen, you work hard. Right.
Work hard.
You work hard. So do
But
I.
they're not mutually exclusive. They're just not. I do.
You know
I've worked
why?
since I was a little kid.
Yeah,
Our parents were educators.
So you're telling me that there are people who can defy the laws of thermodynamics, that they just...
we're not going to argue.
No.
We're not going to argue thermodynamics.
No. We are lifestyle shows. I try to play the part. I try to be a good role model for patients. I work out all the time. I try to eat the way I teach them, just what we've been talking about, minimally processed. But I also enjoy some treats. I'm not to an extreme either. You know what I mean?
Of course
I don't
not.
do carnivore. I don't do, whatever. I relatively try to eat a minimally processed, more Mediterranean pattern diet in general, high fiber. I have my treats. I work hard, and I've always done that consistently. And that is what we want everyone to do, no matter what the problem is. And we're on the same page. I guarantee it. It just doesn't necessarily mean that some people don't need medicine. And no, not 50% of the population should be on it. Absolutely not anywhere near it. We got to do better as a group, as a team. We're all on the same team. You and us, we're all on the same team.
Well,
really.
you sure don't act like it. You attack like pretty much everyone that has any criticism of these drugs.
But it's because the problem is when people see that, it scaremongers.
Yeah, we don't want to.
It's scary.
Well, it's all drugs.
But they
scare
should
me.
be.
I want to take drugs if I don't need to. Yeah, they need to talk to real specialists instead of getting stuff from YouTube and TikTok and all the things. Even though we try to do that to combat the misinformation, there's just so much misinformation because people are scared, and there's also politics and other money involved. It's not just big pharma. But it's, big food, big supplement, the big supplement people are mad about the drugs working.
I mean, I don't know the supplement that claims to deliver weight loss right now at this time.
They all do.
I mean, maybe. I can't think of one at the moment, but I mean...
I just saw a thing on TV the other night about
they all want to
mean something. They're all trying to say
this is the Ozempic.
Oh God, it's.
I think the bottom line is that, like you said, it's a false dichotomy to say like only drugs and only lifestyle
or only surgery. Even in medicine, people debate surgery versus drugs, and I'm like, oh my God. The real experts are like, hey, these are all on a continuum. It's all about patient care. We have to absolutely address the environment. Doctors who are doing all these policies and stuff, they talk about how can we improve policy? Well, unfortunately, our political system's so defunct and our government's so defunct.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have huge problems with that. We don't disagree. It's a problem.
Yeah,
it is. I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did.
I really respect you guys coming on, and I respect you being so open to this debate. And tell people where they can get. I friggin' do not want them to go see you, Spencer, but tell them where they can get.
well, because you're a chauffeur.
I really don't want them going to see you, but tell them where they can get more.
Just Instagram is fine. Dr. Spencer Nadolsky.
Yeah.
I like to make funny memes and things like that.
And educate. I'm Dr. Carl Nadolsky, and we have our Docs Who Lift podcast. And we'll talk about these points, with you and stuff. And we really appreciate your inviting us to talk about this. And
most people don't. They're like,
I want to learn. I always want to learn. And I really want, if you could do more investigating on this virus situation for me, I would love to learn.
I do know who would be the right. I wonder what that. That's we talked about the potential virus.
Virus 36.
Yeah, it's what's his name?
Atkins.
Atkinson. Yeah.
Atkinson.
Anyway,
Dr.
we know who. Maybe we'll do a podcast with him someday. Yeah.
Atkinson.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Appreciate it. First, let me just say that I really respect and appreciate the fact that these guys came on. How they got on, I don't respect and appreciate, because trolling people, especially when you're wrong, is probably not the classiest way of going about things, especially when you suggest you're gonna beat someone up like Rocky IV. I don't know how that went for them. I definitely think the upset is I was Hulk Hogan in this case? Or Janice, was that Rocky 3?
No, I think it was 5.
Was it 5? Okay. I didn't even get to, by the way, we didn't even get to sarcopenia, like the extraordinary muscle loss that people experience on these drugs, which I'm going to be sure to list in the show notes. I'm going to even do a separate segment so that they can bash. But Spencer himself, after coming after me and guys like Dr. Peter Attia, who have talked about muscle loss on these drugs, said himself in an interview with Healthline magazine that he was surprised to see 38% muscle loss in the weight loss associated with these drugs. We didn't even touch upon intestinal blockage, stomach paralysis. And the reason is because, honestly, the more we would go down the list, the more they somehow walked back all of their criticisms that these things weren't concern. I mean, you very clearly said, oh, they're not one human incident of thyroid cancer. Oh, no concerns of pancreatitis. We didn't even get into all of the issues with the Selectra, which I think, you know what? I'm going to do a separate segment on that. Yeah, stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And make sure to let me know what guests you want to see on in the future.